suppose the first thing I want to ask you really is why photography?
Oh gosh, that's such a huge question. I think I just remember going through all of my A-levels and I'd picked a lot of subjects that I felt like I had to pick because the school I was in was very pushy for a sort of academic sort of take. They didn't take you seriously unless you wanted to do medicine, lawyer, things like that. And I remember just not going during the A-levels to classes, like I wasn't connecting with them, quite a low sort of point, and I ended up dropping out and working in a chip shop. And I had a bit of a spat with my parents, nothing massive, but they were like, you've got to do something, you can't just do nothing. And, you know, obviously they were trying to push me into actually being a productive human being, which is never a bad thing. But I remember in sort of spite a little bit, getting really annoyed, logging into the computer, our little like battered little thing, I didn't really, and just picking photography for no good reason, because I had to do something. And then fell in love with it.
So were you visiting sites of famous photographers, or were you just sort of...
Oh no, the college website. My mum was like, pick something. I'm like, all right, no worries. So I picked a photography A-level. I really don't know why. I'd never taken any pictures or anything before, nothing artsy. I used to do a lot of drawing. So I don't know why I went for photography instead of illustration. I have no idea. Day one, got to college, the teacher was like, I don't want to see any digital cameras. Put down a bunch of film in front of us, like exposed already. He put down those light type bags. He put down all the equipment that you would need to get a film onto a spool. And he was like, this is your next month. And every morning we would go into class and we had to practice doing it with, and I just fell in love with it. And then obviously then came the dark room and seeing those prints for the first time. They're all his negatives because obviously we hadn't shot anything yet. But seeing that picture then for the first time and just hooked. When it came to doing our own projects, I was in the dark room from like 8 in the morning. It was still dark because it was winter. Came out at night, just lost my whole life there really.
Yeah. Did you question the fact that he'd loaded film to you and he gave you film first? What was your instinct in your head? How did you feel about that and that he was pushing digital to one side at the time?
It was really I remember thinking, God, what have I signed up to? Because I just thought this looks really sciencey, and I thought, am I academically intelligent enough for this? Because I love the sciences, bit of a biology freak, that kind of thing. But I always felt like, maybe from school, that I wasn't quite academically inclined enough to get my head around that kind of thing. Because obviously you're told if you're doing something a bit artsy, you're not really good enough. So yeah, it was really quite jarring at first, but when it all started to click, I don't remember getting from A to B, but in about a week, it all started making sense and I was ready to, I was like, what's next? What do I do with it? How do I make my own? What do I do? And that was it, yeah.
So what did you do? What was your first project?
My first project, it's a bit cringe now. You think the 18-year-old student. I did trees because obviously we just were given the cameras and we had to go and photograph anything, come back with a roll of film. My first ever photo is a really rubbish one of my dad in front of some ducks and trees at Caerphilly Castle. And then from there I just started walking around wherever I had access to, and I just ended up settling on trees because there was a nice bit of forestry around the village my parents live. And then obviously we had to give it a bit more context, and you're kind of given some subjects as well because it's college, and I ended up doing these very high contrast black and very white pictures of trees that were taking sort of human form. So yeah, which is completely nothing like I would do now, but I found them all the other day and it was a really sweet moment. So.
You did your A-level?
Yeah.
And passed?
Yeah, very well.
And then decided to move on in your education. What was the next step for you?
So I was adamant that I wasn't going to uni, and our college teacher, always so supportive, he was trying to sort of push me towards it because he said, I don't want you to just do this A-level and then do nothing. He was like, I can see how much it means to you. And he got quite a lot of teachers come to visit from universities so they could talk about their courses. And I was only doing photography, so I didn't have enough UCAS points or anything like that. But after seeing all those people come in and talk about their courses and then how they got from A to B, what they were doing now, I think it sort of switched on that there was actually life in photography after, because it wasn't just a hobby at that point. Because I thought, well, I can't just not do it, but I don't know how to make money from it. And my parents want to know that I'm financially safe and secure and to make them happy and feel like not worried. I thought, I'm going to have to find out a way to turn this into actually something. So I ended up doing then a foundation diploma with USW to get the amount of UCAS points. And then I ended up on BA Photojournalism, eventually. So it took a long way around, but yeah, I got there.
So did you find inspiring during that sort of period between A-level and you doing your foundation course? Were you looking at other people's work at the time?
Yeah, the college tutor after about 2 weeks slapped Ynyshir versus Revelations book in front of me and I was hooked. And then after I finished the Trees project, I moved on to photographing drag queens, obviously very inspired. So I ended up visiting Cardiff properly for like the first time, because we lived in a small village. You don't go to Cardiff unless it's a massive deal. And staying overnight with drag queens, and I was really fortunate enough to have my parents drive me there to make sure I was safe so I could photograph drag queens that I've made friends with, and they let me basically just stay with them. And yeah, I think it's probably Ynyshir,
Right.
which is, very...
So how did you find the photojournalism course? Was it, did it inspire? Did it add to the passion that you already had?
Yeah, the photojournalism course turned photography from being something I loved doing to something I genuinely believed I could make a career out of. From day one, they had us photographing the Elvis Festival. We didn't know anyone else really. We didn't know the lecturers. At that point, briefly met, obviously. But from day one, they made it very they included us in a group together beforehand. This is your team, these are your colleagues, these are your students and peers. We're going to go photograph the Elvis Festival. You've got a really tight brief, do your best, make sure you get these kind of things, and we're going to get you published by the end of the day. And we were, and that's when it sort of, from day one, it was always about the end product, like what's after uni. You're not just doing this for fun. There's no point doing anything if you're not going to get anything out of it. You're paying this money, let's do it now. Let's start. So yeah.
And 3-year course.
Yeah.
And what was your final project? Because I've talked to other photographers about, and some of them have revisited their first project, their final projects at uni or wherever. What was your final project?
So in our third year, we do like a minor and a major, and I wanted them to sort of correspond.
Yeah.
I'd had a bad incident in my second year with a spiking of my drink, and I put it to one side that year, but then the next year I really thought it's playing on my mind. I wonder if I can do something with it, but I wasn't really keen on making work about myself. I still very much not. So I ended up finding ways to sort of create work around that subject, with the intention of raising awareness, providing a platform, all of that. So the first part of the project was Cardiff Uni had set up a Get Home Safe scheme for female students. They would be escorted home basically on a night out to make sure they were safe. They had all student-led, all volunteers, and they would basically patrol the sort of student union areas, just make sure nobody's looking a bit fishy, make sure everyone can stand. They supported male students as well, but it was sort of triggered by the increase in drink spiking that had come around at that time. And then after that, I ended up doing a video piece working with Welsh Women's Aid, which interviewed women who had been sexually assaulted in different forms, in different ways. And that was my major.
Okay, so female photography, very much being a man's world.
Yeah.
How did you react to that? Boys do it better. There's always been that sort of feel, isn't there?
Yeah. I don't know. I never actually felt it that strongly, and I don't know if that's me being a little bit oblivious. I always just thought, I want to do it, so I'm going to do it. I guess I might have felt it a few times when you come into a room where you attend a talk and you do sort of notice that you might be in the minority, especially being maybe younger and a student. People sort of look at you and go, you don't know anything yet. Most of the time that was actually, to be fair, that's quite true. But I always sort of took it as well, I'm just going to go talk to them and find out what they do, how they do it. Because if you want to do something, you shouldn't let that kind of thing sort of get in the way. And touch wood, there's not really been that many characters that haven't been very supportive. I think when it comes down to it, we all love the same thing. I'm not sure if I've been extremely lucky in the people that I've met, but or not. But thankfully, yeah, you know, I can acknowledge that it obviously is a little bit male-dominated. Well, not so much now. I'm noticing, you know, there's obviously it's getting better, and it will probably get better. But my experience is male to female not being so bad in photography. So yeah.
So, BA course.
Yeah.
Tick the box.
Yeah, best thing I've ever done.
There was then a decision
Yeah.
to go on with your education
Yeah.
and to do an MA.
Yeah.
What was the reasoning behind wanting to do an MA?
So I didn't feel like I'd accomplished everything I thought I either wanted to do or was capable of doing. So I had like the bread and butter, the best, like, in my opinion, the best training I could have got to be a working photographer. Obviously thanks to my sterling lecturers. But when I sort of left uni, I did a few freelance bits, and I found that I was really quite stressed about where the next bit of finance was coming in. So I sort of worked my cinema job at the time alongside freelance things. But I was noticing a lot of the projects that I wanted to do and a lot of the ideas I had, I kind of felt like I didn't have, like press work and everything, like photojournalism, it tends to be quite fast. Everything is, you know, it's very sped up, it's made for digital, and love that, but there was something in me that was really missing, slowing down, dark room, you know, all of that. So I started looking to wanting to complete that sort of education circle. And I knew the documentary photography MA was definitely like a slowdown in working on a bigger project, like the context, writing about photography as well, thinking about photography in a different way. I just sort of wanted to cover all aspects of it, I suppose. I think probably just a little bit in love with it as well. You know, just wanted to do more, didn't want to stop.
And how inspiring or how difficult did you find because it's quite a jump, isn't it?
Yeah.
How difficult did you find it, and how were you inspired? Were you inspired by your tutors, and what did they give you that was that added extra?
It was definitely different. I'd gone to a few of their exhibitions and looked at a lot of their work, and I kind of knew what I was letting myself in for. But the slowdown, it was definitely just a much different environment. It sort of took it from photography almost to sort of fine art. And my first couple of months was, I'm not good enough for this. It was that feeling of being back in school again and not feeling academic enough, even though it was something that was arts-based. That was quite difficult to wrap my head around. But thankfully, like the lecturers there, they were always very honest, always quite straightforward. And you could always tell that, you know, they were 100% passionate and dedicated to what they were teaching. And that was actually really inspiring in the end. I thought, yeah, you know what? I would want to be like that, so I try to embody it as much as possible, really.
Did you argue your case with them? Or were you intimidated by them?
Intimidated at first. It ended up being a 3-year MA instead of a 2-year just because of the pandemic. But in a way, that kind of did me a favour. I was going to do a project based in the States for my first year. I'd met some amazing people. I got in touch with them online. But obviously with the pandemic, I had to do a complete pullback. And I think for my first year and a half, I guess, before everything, I found that I was trying to sort of square peg, round hole the situation and sort of blend. And then having that space to come back, having that panic, I've got to find a different project. I ended up really thinking about what I wanted to come away with, what kind of photographer I was. Because I didn't really know, you know, I loved photography so much that I was literally willing to like fit myself into any kind of hole just to keep doing it. But the MA sort of helped me sort of slow down and be like, well, what do you want? Who are you? What do you think about photography? What do you think about people? And then I sort of did a project that completely embodied who I am, so yeah.
So who are you?
I am somebody who well, this is still a very loaded question to be fair, but I am somebody who's probably slightly oversensitive about what she photographs, can probably get a little bit too hung up on the relationship between the photographer and the person being photographed. But
In what sense do you mean hung up?
So I always felt perhaps there obviously is the photographer coming in, you are in a position of power. Obviously it is relative to which project you're shooting and who you're working with. It's not always going to be like that for like a commercial piece. But when you really slow down and do a long form documentary, you are essentially, if you're working with a community, which I love, you are invading their lives, and you have to consider a lot of ethics and a lot of morals and everything like that. Obviously it should go without saying, but you know, so I could always get a little bit oversensitive about, do they want to be photographed? Am I just making it attractive because I've got this big camera and they think they're going to be some sort of famous? I don't have that power. I've just fallen in love with them and I want everyone to know how awesome they are, which is so cheesy and awful, and you can't really write loads about that.
I don't think it'd be cheesy at all.
Okay,
because I think that communication with
Yeah.
whoever you're shooting is so vital.
Yeah.
It's vital for your end product.
Yeah.
And it's vital for your soul as a photographer as well. You know.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it if you didn't love it.
No.
But yeah, especially if like my MA project was with children.
Yes.
And obviously, you know, you are very influential to children. You're an adult for one, you know, you're coming in, you're a stranger, you're photographing them, and the biggest fear in your head is, what if in 10 years' time they look back and go, I didn't want to do that, you know? And even though the parents have gone, oh yeah, absolutely, it's fine, it's not a problem, you still need to they're still a human being, you know. That was a very interesting, I'm glad I chose them, because that really like opened a lot of questions I hadn't really thought about. And the children I worked with were performers in a dance school, so they would wear a lot of makeup, a lot of dress up. They were absolutely amazing kids, loved performing.
Yes.
And the parents were very fast to sort of sign the consent. They're lovely people, you know, no super dance mums or anything, absolutely lovely, you know. But I just thought it really has to come from the kids. I was feeling a little bit, a bit squeamish about it.
So what other projects were you working? I mean, 3 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your final project on for the MA? Was it the kids? Or
It was the kids.
It was the kids.
Yeah,
What were you working on? I guess you were working on other stuff as well at the time, were you?
I had a full-time job at the cinema.
Right. Okay.
I was a manager. I was on a 40-hour contract,
Right.
which made a lot of things very hellish.
Yes.
But pandemic and everything, it was my little job in my third year just to sustain me.
Yes.
And then when I graduated, there was a promotion, and you panic about money, so I took it. And because of the nature of cinema, I could do loads of nights, or I could flexi the shifts. I was still able to do photos, but I definitely don't recommend a 40-hour job during a MA.
And you were talking about working with not drag artists. That's
I photograph a lot of burlesque.
Burlesque.
Yeah, and a lot of performers.
And how did that come about? What attracted you to that particular project?
A friend at the cinema had a girlfriend who was a burlesque performer, and he was being a bit cheeky, to be fair. They said, we need a photographer, we can't pay you, but there are boobs. And I'm like, okay. But somehow that was fine. So I was just like, yeah, you know what, whatever. I haven't done it before. I was very keen to do literally everything. This was post spiking and sexual assault incident as well. So I was a bit nervous about how I was going to be about seeing this completely other side of women. You know, I'm used to worrying about, I'm not sure if there was any trauma past the sexual assault incident. I just thought, oh my God, they're going to go on stage and take their clothes off and men are going to look at them. That was my panic. But I got there and it was just, no, these women have got these men by the balls, you know, like, and it was just all women in the audience as well, like men, women, everyone. And everyone was different shapes and sizes, different backgrounds, different cultures, and different kinds of burlesque I didn't even realize existed. There was comedy. And I just thought, yeah, you know what, this is like top sort of, you know, feminism, really. Like this is power, you know. And I was so at ease, and I just kept wanting to feel the way I felt after a show without having to take my clothes off. was nice.
So you were, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing about doing a show,
Yeah.
is the buzz and the adrenaline
Yeah.
rush you get from, and wanting more of it,
Yeah.
and not being able to relax
Addictive.
after a show. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you felt the same as a photographer.
No, instantly you just run home and you want to see what you've got, and you're on the train going through all of your pictures going, they'll love that, this one they will love, I can't wait to send that to her, you know, all of these.
Right.
And you get home and you're there just getting them out, and the next day you're sending the photos going, look at you, and they're like, well, yeah, I know. But to me it's just magic. And then it wasn't enough to photograph them on the stage anymore, because I could see little glimpses when they would come off, they would all hug each other, and you could see it from the wings, them sort of celebrating each other, and I was like, oh, I need some of that as well.
Yeah.
So I asked if they would mind if I would sort of hover and lurk around all areas, and that's how then we ended up doing a full project.
Right, okay.
So yeah, which I didn't end up using for the MA, because I wanted them to sort of be, I didn't want to think about it that much. The MA was so long, I didn't think I could turn something so, what I thought was quite straightforward, pure, didn't really need that many words into something for that. So
How did you feel after the completion of the MA?
a lot of relief, considering that we'd had a pandemic in the middle. But yeah, really pleased with it. You know, it's definitely a different world, but I left sort of feeling like I just learned so much. I thought about things differently. I was like, I've, you know, started a few other projects since, and I'm already, there's no way would I think about doing things with it the way I want to do it now if I had not been on that MA. So yeah.
And how did it affect your confidence?
I think my confidence took a few knocks on the MA, to be fair, because brutal's the wrong word to use. It was just very intense. You know, you'd have group tutorials, and it was that, you know, they always believed that you're not going to get anywhere by just, they called it Mutual Appreciation Society. You're not going to get anywhere by just saying how amazing everyone is. And that, you know, that's true. You're not going to learn anything by putting work in front of someone and them going, yeah, it's really good. You know, you kind of want to just be like, well, more.
Yeah, but was it criticism for the sake of criticism, or was it critical thinking?
Critical thinking, mostly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of, mostly critical thinking, to be fair, because I would always leave. Sometimes I felt awful. I would leave feeling like I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do photos, you know, I'm not good enough for that. But there's something in you that has to, and I just thought, well, what am I going to do if it's not photos? So I thought, well, no, sod it. I'm actually going to come back and I'm going to do what I want to do. So, and it was kind of good to disagree on a lot of things, because just because one person or handful of people don't get it, it doesn't mean it's not valid. As long as you're comfortable in what you're doing and you're not hurting anyone, you've answered all the worries in your head, go for it. You know, if someone's got beef with it, they will tell you, chances, you know, in photography especially.
Right, let's spin back a little.
Yeah.
And by spinning back, what did your parents think?
Oh, they're so painfully proud. They're such nice people. They're so proud. I think they were a bit worried when I started picking up the photography, but I think any publish that I've had, my mum shares it about 8 times on her feed, usually 8 times in a row, which makes no difference, obviously, but you know, it's there. My dad will tell everyone at work about it, any little tiny little achievement, and I think they can just see how happy it makes me.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm really lucky to have supportive parents.
And what projects are you, after your MA, you were working on, you had ideas in your head about projects, you know, what were those projects?
So I have to wrap up with the children. I'm still working with them because I finished their film. We'd ended up doing a film that they'd helped me shoot and they'd had a lot of input in. We need to do a screening night with them to decide whether we're going to put it out there or not. It's completely up to them because, you know, it's their video. And then my next project is with a man named Martin who lives in the Valleys. Martin collects, I hope I get it right now as you'll murder me, but memorabilia, a lot of things based on films, TV and American culture. So his flat, he's got a very small 1-bedroom flat in the middle of the village, and it is from that like bottom door before the stairs, you know, even like the corridor, I'm not quite sure if it's his or not, to be fair, but it's covered in everything from the moment you go in, it's like a grotto of all of this stuff, and he is amazing, he's so passionate about it. And I just thought, this is a guy that wants to be seen, needs to be seen, because his enthusiasm for it is infectious. So I'm hoping that sort of translates over.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, MA box.
Yeah, it's
ticked.
done.
So, what happened to you after you finished the MA? Were you still working in the cinema then? Or?
Yeah, I was keeping an eye out for any jobs, but at the time I was just trying to, the cinema job, like, oh, you know, I'll be very honest, was killing me. It's not what I loved. You know, you're working for a call, everything was, how do we make money, profit this, profit that, you'll cut the staff's hours, all of that.
Yeah.
Loved the job for what it was overall, because it got me through 2 degrees in a pandemic.
Yes.
And taught me a lot of skills, gained a lot of confidence and things like that. But it was definitely time to go. And then a few months later, so I finished in October, and then we got to July, I was just doing portraits, burlesque, anything to sort of try and stay interested and within. I'm still seeing the children on the weekends as well. And then I got sent by a few people, actually, the job opening to S4C's stills officer.
Yes. And you've been in post for a while now.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that post?
Is the best job in the world, to be fair, and I'm not sure, you know, if that, I'm not sure if that's true, but to me, it feels like I've landed. You know, it's still bottom up. You know, you start fresh, starting somewhere new is terrifying.
Yeah.
But it's also a way that I had no idea that any of my degrees would prepare me for. I hadn't considered television or anything like that. I always figured if I was going to go into a full-time photography job, it would be something like newspapers, press, or teaching even. You know, I would never have thought that I would be able or qualified to do anything related to television, but the skills have definitely, they're all transferable. So
how was your interview?
Yeah, really good. It was, all the questions they were asking me was literally half of the BA Photojournalism course. You know, it was all about metadata, captioning rights, everything like that, all the legalities, and then some of the MA course into it by like how you think about photography. If you know, have you seen any good? The cinema came into it as well, because they said, oh, what was the last film poster that you'd seen? What really stood out to you and spoke to you, and how did it do that? You know, they really they challenged my sort of technical sort of process alongside my artistic sort of process, and it was just like all of my degrees, all of my education finally sort of linked together. And yeah, it was just,
fantastic.
Very lucky.
How has that boosted your confidence
Amazingly.
in your as a human being?
Yeah.
And as a photographer, how has it boosted? I mean, I guess, you're looking back at what you've done and what you've had to go through educationally and all the trials and tribulations of that. So how is it? What is now the Lorna Cabble? I finally feel like somebody works in photography, as stupid as that is. But yeah, it's just that sense of self-worth as well. You know, I'm not saying a job in the industry equates to self-worth, but for me personally, I think when you've spent so long doing something that you don't love, which was management of a chain essentially, to finally having everything sort of make sense. You know, I'm still very much wanting to do my own things, but now with this job, the routine is more stable. My colleagues are very supportive, and they sort of understand as well about photography. You know, it's not just a separate thing that I do. I'm able to do my own projects alongside earning a decent wage, and my job is still engaged with photography, so I'm seeing so many different kinds of images, again, that I never thought I'd be looking at. And I'm still thinking creatively. I still get to practice, even though I'm not shooting for them. It's just, it's nice. And I think on that note, we'll wrap this conversation. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch.